All right, the 7 continents, the 7 modal nodes. So think of the 7 diatonic modes: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, which you could give a Nashville number system to, 1 through 7. And those are going to be the locations on the map. Now, I know they look kind of scattered all over the place, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's because I mapped it out on a fretboard. So the number system that I came up with doesn't try to rank the continents or anything like that. It's just how it happened to work out if you try to map this out on the fretboard. The point is, we want to be thinking about continent to continent locations. Now, also realize that this analogy works on a guitar in particular, because on a guitar we have multiple different strings. So although pitch only goes one way, we can think of it as a note number line going up or back, or we can think of it as a circle going around in a circle. The guitar also has multiple different strings on it, so we have to map the same territory on multiple different strings. So this modal nodes are the fixed structure landmarks that maintain their shape no matter the key. So in other words, it doesn't matter what key we're playing in. There are 12 keys in Western music. Once we identify the key that we're playing in, the relationship between the nodes, between the planets, will remain the same. And this is not what you would think. This is totally obvious, but this is not what most people do. Most people learn all of the positions on the fretboard without any context. There could be use to that, but it's going to be way more difficult, and you're not really learning it within context of anything musical. You might as well learn the context of something musical, and we're always going to be using in Western music almost all the time a collection of 7 notes. You can break it down to 5 notes from there, but even that is derived from the 7 notes, and they're always going to have the same relationship to each other. It would be like having a color palette where all the colors are kind of related to each other, and then you change the entire color palette, but all the related hues are kind of the same. That's what we basically have here. So just like continents don't shift as the Earth rotates, these modes stay locked in relative position across the fretboard. So the idea is the planet's going to rotate around. So we're going to assign it 12 degrees of rotation as the planet is rotating around. But when we actually play, we're going to go onto the planet, and I no longer want to be measuring where I am when my fingers are actually on the planets of the fretboard as though there's a grid from space, right? I want to be actually on the planet and look at the latitude and longitude of the map that I'm on. In other words, if you think about our Zelda video game, if we had the grid hovering over the planet, and every time you play the video game, the locations are in a different place, that would be a problem. Now, what about the oceans? Well, the oceans are going to be the other 5 locations. Now, look how beautifully this works out. If you're an American, you probably might not even know that there's 7 continents and 5 oceans. We don't have the best, school system here, but there are. So the analogy works great. You've got 7 continents and you've got 5 oceans that get to our 12 different locations. Now, note that you don't always have to go through an ocean to get to the other continents. So we have Europe going over to Asia here. So that means there's not always an ocean between, the continents that we're going to be looking at. But we have 5 oceans and 7 continents. So the 5 notes outside the diatonic system are like the oceans between the continents. So you can travel through them, but they are not home base. So in other words, we're always in Western music picking one of 12 7-note collections that we're going to be working in, which are equivalent to the 7 continents, which we can give a Nashville number, permanent number system to, not a scale degree changing number system to, or we can name them by the nodes given to us by the Greeks with the Greek names of them. And then the ones that aren't in those 7-note collection are the ones in between. Those are the oceans. They're always going to be in between, always a half step down or a half step up. But there's not an ocean between each of the notes in the collection of 7 notes. So this highlights the function or chromatic tones as transitional spaces rather than stable destinations. So we still want to be able to identify the oceans are there, but that's not where we want to spend most of our time. We're usually going through the ocean, and at some point we need to hit a landmass. Why? Because we're human beings, okay? We need to be on an actual planet. So if you visualize the fretboard this way, it's like playing a video game. You can master it. And you can master it within the context. It's still difficult, but it's totally doable. For most people, the problem is they're visualizing the system incorrectly, and they're taking on way more work in a way that's not contextual and therefore not fun, not gamified, and not optimal. Notice that this system kind of works well on a guitar because there's actually multiple strings. But if you think about it from a pitch system, the notes are actually, we don't have directions, meaning if I go from the North America over here to Asia, I could go this way or I could go straight through this way, for example. But the way the pitch system basically works is that all the continents would be like in order. They're in a circle like a racetrack, or like you're going around a block that just goes around in a circle. So it looks something like this. Remember, the numbers don't mean anything in terms of the continents. It's just how I mapped it onto the fretboard one time. But let's say we're on continent number 2. If I want to get to Antarctica over here, continent number 5, if I put it in a circle, notice I don't need to say go left at the grocery store, go left at the glacier or something like that, and go right when you hit this or whatever. You just need to say it's a block system. So I'm going clockwise or I'm going counterclockwise. All I need is distance and direction, clockwise or counterclockwise. And then I can measure it using 2 different methods that we have here, either destination locations, meaning if I'm on to South America, I can go continent to continent. So I can go 1, 2, 3 continents up. Or I can count the oceans. I can go here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The continent to continent would be as though we're going from place to place in our collection of 7 notes, which are always in order. And if I add the oceans, that would be like I'm going up by note. Now there's a problem with this in that the scale degree system doesn't measure properly. It causes this to be the 1. So this would be the 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the 4th. When it should be 1, 2, 3, 3 notes up within our collection of 7 notes. That's going to cause us all kinds of problems we'll talk about later, but note it's still just simply a measuring system, measuring from this point, either in terms of the notes in order of the collection of notes, typically going clockwise as the default, or including all the notes. Now if I go forward, 1, 2, 3, I could also go counterclockwise. 1, 2, 3, 4. So -4 notes within the collection of notes, which I'm going to call modal half steps backwards, or I can add the oceans backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 backwards. So that's as easy as basically it gets. It's easier than a map of like a Zelda territory, for example. Now, what's the problem with the system? Normally, if we think about this grid as in space, our head is above the fretboard, we're looking down at the fretboard, and we can imagine it's rotating around similar to the world rotating around. The fretboard is rotating because there's 12 different collections of 7 notes. So if I look at this fretboard, I've got E, A, D, G, B, E, frets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I look at the G string, fret 4, that would be this B. The problem is this is not latitude and longitude that's on the actual planet. We're hovering above the planet. And therefore, if I have a different collection of notes, as the planet spins to a different degree, I can still label that a B and be accurate, but it no longer lands on a continent. See, it's not contextually helpful for me. If I was to shoot a laser from space to the planet, I would have to know the degree of rotation in order to know when I'm going to hit something, right? But what I really want to do is to note the degree of rotation and then go to the actual planet itself and then use latitude and longitude. See, this would be like playing, the way most people learn the system, it would be like playing Zelda or whatever your favorite video game is that has a map in it, but the grid line that tells you the latitude and longitude of the locations on the map is not on the Earth, it's hovering in space. Therefore, every time you log into the game, the latitudes and longitudes which are telling you where things are located are changing because the world is spinning and you're using a grid that's hovering in space. that would not be an easy game to play. That would complicate things beyond measure. It doesn't make any sense. What you want to do is, if you're actually on the planet, which our fingers are on the planet, is to measure latitude and longitude from the planet. And we only use the degrees of rotation to tell us where we are on the planet, right? It just orients us to the location on the planet. Then we no longer use the note names. We use the equivalent of the continent names once our fingers are on the fretboard, which would be the Nashville number system, permanent 1 through 7, or the Greek names.